we're putting new stuff out every single day in the store. And so that's how I ask you to support me, whether it's through the weekly show that you hear, or whether it's through one of these comic book reviews that I do, because that's one of the really fantastic things about it is your support of me is support of helping people read, and helping people reach different understandings and different cultures and ideas through print media, and through the visual media, and through an entertaining media, but an informative media and a smart person's media, not a kid's media. That myth was busted a long time ago about comic books being for kids. You know, our kids section of comic books is really small, I assure you, and the number of kids comic books that are released every month is very small, I assure you, in comparison to everything else. I was able to read this week Superman #1, and I've never read that before, and I mean the Superman #1, not one of the many volume this, volume that Superman #1s. The original Superman #1 from 1939, or at least a reasonable facsimile thereof. And by reasonable, I say, of course, I grabbed the shiny one. I know that's sacrilege, but that's why I do it, because of the sacrilege. No, I like the pretty shiny one. I think they're great, especially if you light them properly, and because they're facsimiles, you don't have to worry about them sort of being exposed to light, for one thing, or damaging them. When you read them, you can pull them out of the package and you can read these things. And this book is huge, Superman #1. I've never read it before, like I said. Of course, I know Superman, just like anybody else knows Superman, and then probably a little bit more than most people, just being connected to comic books like I am. But ultimately, I'm not a Superman fan. You know that if you listen to the show, or if you caught one of these reviews. You know that I'm not a Superman fan. And it's not that I don't like him or I don't respect his world or anything. It's just that I've never found a connection. I've read various Superman stories throughout, and to be honest, now after reading this, that I actually have a little bit more connection to him, because he's a little bit less of this godlike character in these early presentations. And I didn't know that the Superman #1, that the 1939 version, was just a collection of works of it's the first 4 issues of Action Comics, the Superman part of the first 4 issues of Action Comics, with an expanded origin story in it. So I didn't know that, and so that was kind of neat. And of course, I've read the origin story. You have to read Action Comics #1, right? And the cool thing about that is that I'm not reading a Superman book. I'm reading Action Comics #1, that just happens to have this story about this kid from this planet, and this, the whole thing. But then it has all these other fantastic characters and stories in it as well. And I love the anthology books. You hear me talk about them all the time. I still get Action Comics to this day. It's still on my pull. As well as Detective Comics. They're both on my pull, because they are anthology books, and they treat them, generally speaking, like anthology books. Every once in a while, they slip off and they concentrate maybe too much on a character, but ultimately they're anthology books, and they introduce potential new characters and storylines and situations and things, I think, more often than you can reasonably do with a character book, a Superman book, because it's Superman. You expect it to be consistent for a period of time. It's one of the things comic books struggle with these days, is that consistency in the presentation. Not to mention the whole short-term memory of people, the short attention span of people, and keeping their attention. And so they struggle with having to sort of recreate the characters along with the artists, and it's really always been the case. And that was kind of really made clear in reading Superman #1 here, because of the fact that it was so old and so different. While I'd read the origin of Superman before, I'd never read the second, third, and fourth stories of Superman, and learn a little bit more about him. And the origin of Superman isn't as big in the original as it is in this. They'd had a year, I guess, of doing the Superman, the strips, and in Action Comics, and I don't know where all else, and so they were able to come up with this bigger collection like this. I didn't realize that that's exactly what it was, and so it was neat to be able to see how different of a character he really was compared to what he is today, where he's almost an invincible guy, or has been, and seems that way. It doesn't matter. They've killed him off. They bring him back. You generally can't go around killing off real people, right? You can do it to super soldiers. You can do it to superheroes from different planets. You can kill them off and bring them back to life. It's a little harder to do with real people. You have to make them radioactive or something like that. You have to give them some reason to be able to come, or they're the undead, or they ran into some god or something after death, and he gave them another chance. And that's a storyline. That's a thing. That's Asajj Ventress's storyline, right? That's what happens to her. She's dead, but the sort of, it's not gods, but it's the witches, Mother Talzin in the afterlife brings her back and gives her a reason, and just kind of obviously a trope within storytelling. But Superman #1, it's DC Comics, of course, and it's Jerome, Siegel, and Joe Schuster. That's how they present it. These are facsimiles, so these are exactly like, aside from my insistence on the pretty foil thing, it's basically exactly like the comic book, and well, the price a little bit different there, but that's relative too. It's a huge book, 64 pages, and it's a collection of that, the origin, and then the first 4 issues of Action Comics. And of course, the origin story is Krypton. It's doomed. His father puts him in the little baby rocket, and he rockets off and crashes to Earth. And then the Kents find him, and they raise him. Of course, actually, what they do is they find him and they turn him over to an orphanage. And eventually, they come back and they adopt him. And they don't mention John's name in that origin story, but they do mention Mary's name, not Martha, Mary's name, and there's certain obvious things about him that are so much different today. There's not a huge focus on necessarily where the powers come from, the influence of sun. It's just that he's an alien. He's just not earthly. He can't fly. He can leap sort of an eighth of a mile. They literally sort of just kind of say he can leap an eighth of a mile. That's what he can do. He can jump through the air, and so he kind of just leaps and dives to where he's going. And he's not necessarily impervious. While you get a lot of the bouncing bullets and things like that coming off of him, they do mention something to the effect of a more powerful round actually being able to permeate his skin potentially. They don't show it, but they suggest it in the language that they use. He doesn't work for the Daily Planet. It's the Daily Star that he goes to as Clark Kent to try to find a job when he grows up, and he has to kind of sneak around, and it's kind of like the Spider-Man thing where he has to, Jonah Jameson will only pay Peter Parker money if he catches Spider-Man. He gets the Spider-Man story. Well, that's what the I didn't even catch the guy's name. The editor of the Daily Star tells Clark to do. Well, that's what Clark decides he has to do to be able to get the job, because ultimately they just overlook him. And so he's more of a sort of a reporter / investigator kind of, and that's consistent with superheroes coming out of the previous types of stories, the detective stories, the occult stories, things like that led up to the superheroes and their catching on. So it makes sense that he's more of an investigator, more of an investigative reporter than he is a sort of a hero necessarily. And he's almost in a sense doing the superhero stuff to get to get the job and to be the reporter and to be able to keep the job. But that's short lived. He quickly becomes about justice and law and order, and and you kind of, as an anarchist, I see that he's kind of indoctrinated with this idea that only the state provides justice. But it's weird because a lot of the things that he does is sort of stopping the state and people who would support the state, the people out there cheering him on, yeah, go ahead and execute him thing. He kind of gets in between those people. And so again, it makes a much more interesting character than maybe the necessarily strict, just shy of, I can't even use the word, authoritarian. He a very scary authoritarian, the type of which is pictured in it's the Zack Snyder Justice League, right, where they finally show that Superman supports an authoritarian regime in the world, and Batman is against it. And sorry, I don't know the whole storyline. I just know what they introduced there, and I've seen mention of it and things about it before, but I don't know the actual storyline, the Justice League storyline that all ties into all of that. But he does eventually become all about justice and law and order, for what it's worth. But he's not above sort of enacting really real justice. I talk about real justice all the time, what real justice is, and there's actually a really good example of it on the show today at towardanarchy.com. But you would have to go there. You'd have to pull out of this. We'll get back to that here in a minute. There's actually a really good link though there about real justice, and Superman is not above exacting real justice and sort of beating the snot out of somebody who beat their wife, or he's clearly, he believes that here, this is what you did to that woman, let's show you what it's like to have somebody stronger than you slap you around a little bit. No, go ahead, throw your punches. And they don't go into it necessarily. It's not like today where you just see him leaving a bloody pulp and mess. You get the hint you get the little crosshatch drawing type of bruises on him, and the torn clothing and that thing. And so that Superman packed a lunch and homeboy didn't. Superman was ready to be there all day, and this guy wasn't. And it's neat to see him do that. What's not cool is him simping for Lois and hiding his masculinity, his powers. He doesn't seem to understand that there would be a middle ground in any of these situations where he has to act like a man. He takes Lois out on a date. He finally gets her to go out on a date with him, and they're accosted by some ruffians in the club, and he just simps. He wimps off, and there's obviously. It's about him, hiding his identity, and we get all that, and it's for the story and everything. But the truth is, the more realistic superhero would, he'd be that person that would find that space in between. You wouldn't just go the complete opposite direction of it. I don't think you could. It would be against your nature to allow people, especially, he's talking about justice and standing up for justice and acting justice really truthfully on the spot, and that the best way to do that obviously is on the spot. Yeah, I'm going to hand you over to the authorities, and you'll pay for what you did to this person in those terms of society's expectations. But smack, here you go. Here's a little bit of what here's a little bit of medicine for you. And the stories are a little bit interesting because there was lots of sort of early political statements, and really early political statements, because it's very clear that there's this one point where there's a back room deal with some politicians, and they're trying to drag the U.S. into the war at the time. This is 1939. and so they're talking about Second World War, and they're trying to drag the U.S. into the war, and it's a military industrial complex. It's the whole conspiracy, right? It's these guys, these gods of war type people, musicians and arms dealers, that sort of thing, doing backroom deals with politicians to drag us into war. I just as an adult, I found the comic book to be a lot more in tune with who I am as a person, of 52 years of age. The Superman character to be a lot more in tune to who I am, a throwback, I guess, maybe, to a time where there was a such thing as honor, where men carried themselves honorably. That's what I'm saying, and where you didn't let somebody assault you and hurt the people that you love, that you did something about it on the spot, that you didn't rely on the state to get some sense of justice, that you did what you could at the time, and that people were ultimately empowered about themselves and about protecting themselves. It's really, truly a neat thing, and I really enjoyed being able to read it and to be able to tell you about it. Support me by going to amazingfantasies.com. If you can't get your hands on one of these, obviously you can jump up there on the internet and you can get one all day long, but I would be happy to help you out if you don't have a local comic shop in your area, and there are plenty of people who don't. There are less than 2,000 comic book shops in America. And so I get it. If you don't have one, reach out to me at amazingfantasies.com. We will be glad to set you up on a pull list and mail stuff out to you. If you're here in the contiguous, for sure, it would be almost no problem whatsoever with just logistics, just make the thing happen. We'd be glad to do that for you. Otherwise, if you're ever in Topeka, Kansas, stop in the store sometime. That would be fantastic to see you. So go back to towardanarchy.com.